Hi, welcome to Blurbal Reasoning. Today we are talking about The Wheel of Time Book 3, The Dragon Rising by Robert Jordan. Just so you know, this is going to be full of spoilers. No further spoilers than the third book, because that's as far as I've ever gotten. But everything leading up to this. Basically, if for whatever reason you've decided, oh hey, a video about The Wheel of Time Book 3, I can watch that without spoilers. No, you can't. You can't do it. It's not what we're here about. At the same time, though, Blurbal Reasoning, not a formal review, just kind of my summary of thoughts about the book, and even more so this time round because I took about 3 weeks to a month off of reading it. I got a little bit distracted by a couple of other things. I got a little bit, I don't know, something about the pacing of this book kind of drew me away from it, but when I came back to it, I enjoyed the second half of it. Before we go any further with this, let's read the blurb, because that is what we do, unless I forgot to do it in previous videos, or maybe I'm doing it for the first time. I'm really not keeping track of this very well. The wheel of time turns and ages come and go, leaving memories that become legend. Legend fades to myth, and even myth is long forgotten when the age that gave it birth returns again. In the third age, an age of prophecy, the world and time themselves hang in a balance. What was, what will be, and what is may yet fall under the shadow, with a capital S. Winter has stopped the war, almost, yet men are dying, calling out for the dragon. But where is he? In the heart of a stone lies the next great test of a dragon reborn. And besides some information about the TV show that they're making, there's not really much else about that, so that's a surprisingly spoiler-free blurb. The thing that surprised me the most about this book outright is that while it's never been a single narrator, we have jumped around a little bit in book 1 and much more in book 2 with different characters. In the third book here, we barely get Rand's perspective at all, and I think it's really well done because we as readers are going to be wondering if Rand is going mad, and it's fun to explore that from the perspective of other characters even more than it is to explore it from Rand himself, because there's only so many times you can write, "Light, am I mad? I might be mad already, but if I know I'm mad, am I truly mad?" Part of me was kind of sad about this because I've really enjoyed Rand as a character and I like the idea of following someone down a path to madness, but it does make it all special when we get a random snippet from him and we find out that he's beheading people while barely stopping to ask who they are. And that chapter in particular where he meets a group of travellers and then he's seemingly acting nice towards them, but he's like super paranoid, and then he just fucking summons his sword of fire and beheads them all. Like, that was like, holy shit, wait, is Rand actually evil now? I guess not evil, just mad. But like, he's doing bad stuff now. Is he not the hero of the story? Because, you know, we never get closure on whether they were planning to attack him or not. We're kind of given hints that there was a grey man among them, because we learn about a grey man, I think, in this book. And it's like, Rand's like, oh, I didn't notice that guy there, but he had like a dagger in his hand and stuff like that. But you know, maybe those merchants didn't know that. I don't know, maybe I'm reading too much into it, but I'm pretty sure it's kind of hinted at that he just killed a bunch of innocent people there because he was paranoid, which is really interesting. But yes, instead of focusing on Rand, this book spent a lot of time with Mat, because it spent a lot of time with Perrin, and it spent a lot of time with Nynaeve, and with Egwene, that's her name. But as I had mentioned in previous books, we had not seen from the perspective of Mat yet. And what I find so interesting is that as the perspective shifts away from Rand, who is losing his mind to the one power, we instead finally get the perspective of Mat, who is no longer losing his mind to the curse. So there's an interesting kind of theme running here of, if you're losing your mind, we're not going to see much from your perspective. And again, who knows if that was a stylistic choice to add to the mystery of what's going on in a person's psyche, or if it was more just Robert Jordan didn't necessarily want to write the same paragraphs about going mad over and over again. But I liked it, and I thought it was a delight to spend more time with Mat, especially the way Michael Kramer narrates him, because Michael Kramer obviously narrates the male kind of chapters, the male perspective chapters, and he gives different voices to most people. Most of the innkeepers sound the same, you know, there's only so many different voices you can put on for people, but Matt's has a really, I don't know, it's just done really well. If you listen to the audiobooks, you know what I mean. If you haven't, I recommend them. I really like that this book kind of takes its time to tell us that, hey, remember, Mat and Perrin are also Taviran. They're also these really really important characters in the world. Just because we've spent so much time with Rand and talking about how he's potentially the Dragon Reborn and all this stuff, doesn't mean that they're not important too, and I think that's a major thing this book goes out of its way to show you. There's still lots of mystery around Matt. First of all, he starts speaking in the old tongue again, and you're kind of channeling that, I mean, not channeling with a capital C, but channeling that kind of aspect of him. It turns out he's really fucking good with a quarterstaff in a fight, and I know this series has a lot of stuff to do with reincarnation and stuff like that, so I'm assuming it means that he is basically the reincarnation of someone who was by Luciferin's side back all those years ago. In fact, and again, I kind of read this book in 2 sittings, so apologies if most of the hints towards the first half of the book were there and I've forgotten them and I've gone down the wrong path, but the amount of times that the travels of Jane Fastrider, Jane, something beginning with a J, Fastrider, gets shoved under our noses, especially around Matt. I bet he's the reincarnation of that dude. Unless he's just another version of Rand and Luciferin, then I'm sorry. I'm looking for stuff that isn't there, I guess. I'm a typical reader. Sorry, what can I say? But the other thing that was interesting about Matt in this book was luck. He has some kind of power attributed to luck, and throughout this story we learn he kind of figures it out that it's more based on random luck, so more dice throws and less I don't know, stuff that's got some skill-based stuff with it. I like that he pairs up with Tom Merrilin for most of the story. He makes a good straight man for well, I guess it's not like a straight man and a comedy man routine, you know, but it's definitely kind of a way of grounding Matt with someone who gets to watch his actions and proclaim how wild they are, like when he just randomly decides to skin open a firework and throw half of it on the fire because I want to figure out how it's working. We also spent a lot more time with Perrin, and while I don't love his character per se, I do enjoy it. I think my main criticism with Perrin's character is the same criticism that you can find across all of the Wheel of Time, or at least all of Robert Jordan written Wheel of Time. Of course, I've not got that far yet, and that's that he can repeat things slightly too often sometimes, and so we get to hear about Perrin and how he's dealing with the what's it called again? I don't want to look it up because I'll probably accidentally run into spoilers, but his wolf-related powers. We learn more about that. We don't necessarily learn more about it, actually. We just kind of get more of it, of him being like, oh, like, I accidentally sensed for wolves to see if there are any nearby. Oh, I shouldn't be doing that. And he was doing that in book 2. He's doing that by the start of book 3. He's doing it at the end of book 3. But of course, the main character development Perrin gets here is he meets up with somebody called Fail, which means falcon, because Min had a vision about her, and she's meant to be someone very important in his life, and the thing that kind of ties him together with her in the end is they both have this kind of animalistic imagery about them. I guess, you know, it doesn't tie them together from his perspective, but like as a reader you can kind of put 2 and 2 together, like, oh, he sees kind of animal in her the same way she sees the animal in him, I guess. Does she see the animal in him? I guess that's not a fully thought out consideration I've made now. She's always calling him Farmer's Boy and Blacksmith, I guess, so not really. I think my favourite chapter based around Perrin was towards the end of a book, when he has the chance to work as a blacksmith for a day again, and you get to see how he legitimately loves his job, and through the writing of that chapter you kind of come to see what he would like about it, and how satisfying it would actually be, and you believe every word of it when he's talking about how much he wants to be a blacksmith, and when he's looking at the axe on one side and the hammer on the other, and it's kind of the two divides of his life and where he's been or where he wants to be versus where he's ended up being. And then of course when he enters Teleron Riod, thank you for that one. Audible, I would never have been able to pronounce that myself. I find it interesting that when he's not padding around as a wolf in that area, in that dreamlike world, he is instead wielding the hammer as a weapon, which I think is kind of like this almost anime style, like, oh, he had these different aspects to him, but now he's combined them and he's more powerful for it because now he fights with his hammer as well as forging, and he's embraced his nature as a blacksmith and combined it with his nature as a warrior, you know? I guess that's me projecting though, because I've been, obviously if you've seen my previous video, super getting back into Bleach. Now we should probably talk about the part of the book where I fell off, because it's to do with the 3 women, and it's not because they're written badly or anything like that. It's, I don't know what it is. It's for whatever reason, maybe it's because the magic is a little bit more vague, even though it gets explained to us so many times. The actual physical actions of it, when it comes down to it, is all about, oh, without even knowing how she did it, and then looking at it, she thinks she could figure out how she did it. If she weaved air and spirit together, she could do this. But that's about as much as we get. But that's a very vague whinge. I guess what I'm saying is I wasn't hugely invested in the idea of the 3 women going after the Black Archer, the 13 women who had become Dark Friends, even though they were Aes Sedai. Wow, people of power turning to the dark side? That never happens. I will air one pet peeve though. In this book, I think it started here, Nynaeve starts tugging at her braid when she's angry or anxious. And that's fine, you know. Pulling your hair out is an actual mental thing that people end up doing when they're stressed or anxious. But, oh my god, if you have the Kindle edition of this book, I want you to go in there, because you can search for phrases and search for tugged on her braid, and tell me how many times it comes up, because it's got to be upwards of 20 in that single book. And it got to the point where, because I listened to this on the way to work, it would be like, Nynaeve tugged on her braid, and I went, of course she did. It's a pet peeve, but my god, it annoys me. Nynaeve as a character kind of annoys me, to be honest. Just like, I get that she's meant to be the angry one and the one who's out for vengeance for Moraine for ruining the lives of her friends, but I never get the sense that she's actually going to carry that vengeance out. It seems childish, and she as a character seems to be someone who thinks she's above that childish nature. I'm not saying that's badly written, because I think it's very well done. I think that's exactly how I meant to see her, but I also just dislike her as a character because of it. I do think Egwene, despite me not necessarily enjoying her slavery arc in Book 2, I think it has led to some very interesting character development, because this character who was always described as being very gentle, well, I guess that's not fair, because in Book 1 she takes great pains to show that she is not just a gentle girl from a village, and she does want to go off on an adventure with everyone else, but all the same, like, she has this new quality about her now, where whenever she's in danger of being cut off from her power or being restricted in any way, she kind of freaks out. Not in like an overdone way, but she definitely is a lot quicker to anger now. She's a lot more headstrong. She's a lot more violent, but not to the point of like she's just brutally killing people left and right. We make sure to learn that by the end of the book. She, even for the Black Archer, she doesn't kill them. She doesn't leave them in places where they're being tortured. She just restricts them, which arguably from her point of view would be a kind of torture. But of course that's not the only thing that happens to Egwene in this book. We learn a lot more about her powers as a dreamer, and of course she gets that Terangrial, thanks again Audible, where it allows her to go to Tel'aran'rhiod and walk the dreaming world. And in fact, the dreaming world is a big theme in this book. Well, not theme, but I guess focus. We learn more about it, whereas in the previous book we learned more about the idea of these, I've already forgotten what they're called, I apologise, but these pocket worlds of things that could have been or things that might yet be, which you can use to kind of travel across the world. I suspect that's kind of tied to Tel'aran'rhiod in a way, but we learn more about the actual dreaming aspect of Tel'aran'rhiod. That being said, this does mean that Egwene is constantly puzzling about what she sees of the other characters in the story, which is presented to her in a very metaphorical fashion. Like, you see loads of stuff about Perrin as a wolf, you see stuff about certain characters with certain figures, you know, kind of approaching them, and it's all very obvious what it means to us because we've been seeing from their perspective. But to Egwene, obviously, it's not obvious because she doesn't know what's going on in their lives, and she can't necessarily dissect what the metaphors mean for those characters. But the problem is that we as readers do know what it means, so we're just sat there like, Egwene, it means this, if you could just figure it out, it would be really helpful for this situation. Hi, sorry, out of continuity, Christian here. I'd finished a video and then I remembered that I forgot to mention my favourite part of this book, and that is we saw Egwene's kind of trial where she, you know, did the whole past, present, future thing, and it was all very Rand focused, of course, but the interesting thing we're getting to here is the future, because of course it is. In Egwene's possible future, she was none other than the Amyrlin seat herself, and you get this impression that we are very, very far forwards in the future. We've always had hints about how the Aes Sedai maintain their age, maintain their youthful look, and the kind of impression you get behind that is that they are hundreds of years old, not just like, oh, you know, she's 50 but she looks 30. You get the impression that obviously these are magic users. They're going to be extending their lives artificially, and that's kind of, if I remember right, and again, sorry if I'm wrong, I'm pretty much that's explicitly stated, because she sees Rand, and the text says something along the lines of, like, for the first time in hundreds of years, or like she's dealing with a insubordinate Aes Sedai who's telling her that she's hated her for hundreds of years or something like that, which is amazing. But then again, maybe she just says all these years and my imagination ran away with me. I love the idea that this conflict with Rand as a mad dragon reborn could have lasted for hundreds of years, but more importantly, I love the fact that Egwene, little mild-mannered Egwene, ends up being the Armelin seat, the one with all of the power, the one with all of the, you know, she's very smart, she's very powerful, she's plotting, like she tells her vice chancellor lady or whatever she's called that, hey, yeah, by the way, I never actually took the oath, so I've been allowed to lie this entire time, and in her kind of perspective as the Amelin seat, she reminds us a lot of the actual current Amelin seat, whose name I blank on at the minute. But yeah, that entire sequence was really cool, and if this series of books ends up spanning hundreds of years and like the characters age wildly across multiple time skips, I would love it. I don't think it actually will though. I think a time skip would be cool, and I think it could happen. I don't think it'll be hundreds of years. I just think this is kind of like a cool what if scenario, and I love my what if scenarios, so I was a happy reader. Now again, this video is probably going to be slightly shorter than the previous books because I spent some time away from it and I'm not going into it as super detailed as I was before. Apologies about that. But I do want to talk about the ending of the book, obviously. I think this book does an absolutely beautiful job of sending the characters on their separate ways and then having them meet up again by the end, by not just forcing them together for the sake of it, but by going there in separate paths, and the fact that all of the kind of events of this world are naturally leading back to Tyr, and that by following the events of a world and trying to stop bad things from happening and following the bad people who are trying to do the bad things, they all end up in Tyr and they all end up crossing paths again. And again, I think I mentioned this in a previous video about this book, but as someone who read A Song of Ice and Fire and watched Game of Thrones, which is very much a story about, and I won't spoil it, but like a group of characters splitting up and then not meeting each other again for a very long time. It's kind of like Val on turbocharge. It's these characters split off, have character development, and then come back, and then they split off again. It's like if we're talking about it in terms of a physical diagram of characters splitting off and meeting up again, then whereas Game of Thrones is more of like an oval, it feels like Wheel of Time is more of a DNA strand. It's just super satisfying, and I'm an absolute sucker for, wait, that's weird, she thought she saw Rand go down that corridor, but that couldn't have been, and it's like, it was him, I know it was. The final fight starts with Rand confronting Forsaken, who is supposed to be bound in Sheol with the Dark One himself, but unsurprisingly is not, and he surprisingly almost loses until Moraine steps in and blows him up, which was very nice of her, thanks Moraine. Hope we learn some more about the forbidden arts she's been practicing, because that's a cool storyline. But after Rand eventually ditches his really cool fucking sword made of fire from the One Power, and inevitably just picks up a magic one that's going to do all the work for him. No, I don't mean that. I'm a sucker for a fancy magical sword. I think it's cool. He inevitably does a big fight with the Dark One, with Baalzamon, and as tends to happen at the end of these books, it all gets a little bit abstract and weird, and it ends the same way the previous two books end, with Rand defeating the Dark One and thinking he's killed him for good, and us readers thinking, I mean, I learned quickly, I didn't think it for a second, but us readers being led to think, oh wow, like that was some pretty definitive language there, in amongst all the abstractness. Rand certainly killed the Dark One there, everything sounded pretty damn final, and Moraine goes, no, there's still a lot of fucking books left in this series, you think it's ending here? And everyone's like, huh? But he killed him, and she's like, nah, and we're all like, oh, okay, and then it's never explained again. I mean, I'm sure it will be one day. I have a theory, actually. Shall I tell you my theory? I'm going to tell you my theory, and it's going to be wrong. When Moraine is telling them that, hey, by the way, Dark One's still around. Balsamon was probably just another Forsaken, turns out, lol. She has in her hands a seal of the Dark One's prison, right? And she says that the previous two she found were broken, and I'm sorry if I'm wrong, I'm pretty sure she says that she found them around the time of the final battle, right? I mean, we know she found one at the end of The Eye of the World, but I don't remember her finding one at the end of book 2, but maybe she did. I think she says she pretty much did. But anyway, because Balsamon makes a lot of fuss and noise about you will serve me whether you want to or not, I think he's doing just that. I think Rand is serving him. I think all of this, like, oh no, you have defeated me, I'll get you next time, He-Man. I think all of this posturing and stuff like this is a giant act by the Dark One. Or if it's not an act, it's a lie. It's something to do with a lie he's been telling one of his Forsaken, who's been acting as if he is the Dark One. And throughout the course of this fight, he's using some magical trickery to get Rand to break the prison seals, because what else could break them? We hear multiple times just how strong these prison seals are, and how impossible they are to break, and who could possibly break them because they're so strong? Well, who else but the Dragon Reborn himself, who is prophesied to usher in another breaking of the world, I think, if I remember correctly. Apologies if I'm wrong, so on and so forth. So, I don't necessarily know what Rand would have done differently. This is a very half-baked theory, I know. I don't know what he would have done differently during this fight to ensure that the seal that Moraine finds this time isn't broken. I mean, this time Balsamon is on the run, and this time he kills the guy who either is masquerading as Balsamon, or who is Balsamon masquerading as the Dark One. We have a corpse this time. So it seems like Rand maybe won this battle, but the previous two he lost, even though he thought he won them. I don't know, like I said, it's all kind of presented to us in a very weird way. As Wheel of Time fans who love the series, and no doubt know everything about it already, will tell me in the comments, I just need to keep reading and find out, because here's something I've heard recently. Apparently the Wheel of Time, it all starts to kick off in book 4, and apparently the Wheel of Time doesn't fully start until book 5. And I know what you're thinking, Christian, what the hell are you doing consuming Wheel of Time based content? You're gonna get spoiled. And all I did was I looked up the term Wheel of Time Book 3 recap, because I wanted to know if I could walk away from this series, take a break from it, and then, because it's a fantasy series with lots of characters and lots of things going on, if I could find a recap video where it basically tells me, hey, you've been away from Wheel of Time, this is what happened in the last book you read, to kind of catch me up, so that I could jump back into it without having to worry about boring real life eating up my Wheel of Time memories. And I did. I found a really cool channel, which I'm not going to search for right now because I don't want to accidentally spoil myself. The Google autocorrect search field is a landmine, but I found a channel which I'm going to be referring back to, because that brings me to my next point. It has been a while since I did the book 2 video, and I alluded to that when I said I read this in kind of 2 sessions, like a couple of weeks on the first half and a couple of weeks on the second half, but a fair few weeks in between those 2 halves. I do not want to burn out on reading this series, and at the same time I have only used Audible tokens on these books. I want to explore what else Audible has to offer, so, and I'm still considering this because the end of book 3 intrigued me. I might just jump into book 4, but I might instead have a break and go and read something else. Not like the beginning of a new series that I'm going to have to see all the way through before I can go back to Wheel of Time, because that would be dumb. But, I don't know, just like a novel. Just another novel, which I'll obviously do a Blurbal reasoning on when I finish. At the minute, I'm thinking of diving into some of the Doctor Who novels, because you can get them in little collections for 1 token each. And I kind of am a sucker for franchise fiction. So yeah, I might go and do something like that, or I might read one of the first Halo books or something like that. But in the meantime, I will get back to Wheel of Time. And again, I might not even take a break right now, but if I don't do it now, I will do it at some point. I mention this because I noticed that these Wheel of Time videos get more views than my usual videos, and I typically gain a couple of subscribers after each one too. So I know that there's a couple of people who are subscribed to this channel explicitly waiting for me to upload Wheel of Time based content. And thank you for putting up with all of the completely unrelated videos popping up in your subscription feed in the meantime. I know I tend to be a very gaming based channel. I would split my Blurbal reasoning based stuff off into its own channel, and thoughts on stuff like that too. but I don't have an audience as it is, so for most stuff, so I think splitting them up would be a bad idea. So either way, whether I will be making another video in 3 weeks or whether I'll be making another video in 3 months about this book, I will be making another video. So thank you very much for listening. Let me know, without spoilers obviously, what you want me to know about in the comments, I guess, if I got anything wrong, if I misremembered something, if you're excited about my excitement about the series, if you disagree with my criticisms, just leave a comment and I'll probably get back to you if you're not like some sort of horrible troll, which I'm sure you're not. Thank you very much for listening, and I will see you in another video.